boogeyman is coming.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
We have eternity to know your flesh.
Piss your pants. I said, piss your pants.
I think we just picked up Dracula.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
You got red on you.
Stay when you're down here with me. You blood soul! My family's always been in me.
The whole family of Draculas.
So horror movies.
Yeah.
A year ago, I did the first show of this style, and I covered Black Christmas as a Christmas movie, and it kind of kicked off the whole new route for this show. And every year at Christmas, there's going to be a Christmas horror movie episode. This is the technical first episode of season 2 of the format of the show now. And there's a lot of Christmas horror movies out there. And there's going to be no shortage for years to come of ones for me to cover. But there's one to me that is head and shoulders above the rest of them. Now, is it the scariest horror movie ever? No, it is not. Is it the best Christmas horror movie ever? I think so. And it is Gremlins. And today, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about my favorite Christmas movie. And I know another guy who likes this movie a whole lot, and I asked him if he wanted to be on the show. And that's Pat Franklin from PodVanDam. How's it going, Pat?
Hey, yo. What's going on? I love Gremlins very much.
I do,
too. It is a Christmas movie. I don't care what anyone says. It's all, it's horror comedy, but it's a horror movie. Come on, I mean.
I think so, too. And that's something we'll talk about later because both of us seem to have the same opinion. It is a Christmas movie. It is a horror movie. People involved in making it seem to disagree with us, Pat.
I mean, how many murders can you have in a movie before it's officially considered a horror? There's a lot of people that die in this movie.
Right? A lot of people that die. There's monsters.
Yeah, there's a lot of beings that die. Whether they're human or not, there's a lot of murder. Entire building gets fucking blown up and killing everyone inside except for one thing, so like,
and there's like some sadistic shit in it, like,
oh, yeah.
even stuff that's not like murder. There's like discussion of fucking murder, and like it's definitely a horror movie. And I don't know how it couldn't be a Christmas movie when it takes place on motherfucking Christmas, and the basis of it is a guy getting his kid a Christmas gift.
Yeah, right. The main character per se, I guess he's not the main whatever, but yeah, the Mogwai he's a Christmas gift. How is it not a Christmas movie? Like, that's just, we're not talking quantum physics here.
No, not at all. I think people get really hung up. Like, look, I'm not one of the people who wants to debate like, oh, that's a Christmas movie. That's not a Christmas movie. Like, yes, I understand it's not a fucking Hallmark Christmas movie. I get that it's not a Lifetime Christmas movie about a girl who goes back to her hometown to fall in love with a guy who works at a construction yard or whatever the fuck those movies are about.
Yeah.
I also get that it's not like, it's not Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but it's a Christmas movie. And I think people spend a whole lot too much time arguing about what is and isn't a Christmas movie.
It's close to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Like, it's creatures that you think wouldn't be able to talk, definitely talk and communicate. That's in common. I mean, fuck.
That's true. That's a very good point you just made.
I mean, fucking A.
So Gremlins came out in 1984. It's got a runtime of 106 minutes, which is, boy, that's the sweet spot. Like,
yeah, it goes so fast. I feel like it's a fast watch.
Yeah, I like it. directed by Joe Dante, produced by Michael Fennell, executive produced by Kathleen Kennedy, who has been in charge of Star Wars over at Disney, and Steven Spielberg.
I'm new to the Star Wars train. I must say, I'm hooked.
Dude, well, you picked the best thing to get you hooked with.
Yeah. I know this isn't about that, but you brought up Star Wars, and I was not a Star Wars person prior, and so if you're out there listening and you're like, I don't really give a shit about Star Wars, but you wanted to watch that show Mandalorian, you should, because I was in the same boat.
You really should. It's fucking fantastic.
What does she do?
She's she runs that whole Star Wars part of Disney.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, she's graduated way up the chain to being in charge of
she worked on Gremlins. I'm not surprised she went on to do sweet shit because Gremlins fucking rocked.
Yeah, well, some nerds really hate her because she also allowed movies they don't like to happen and whatever. But I'm not here to argue any of that shit. She also let The Mandalorian happen, and it's the greatest thing in Star Wars history.
Fucking A.
The film was written by Chris Columbus. Do you know who Chris Columbus is?
He did a bunch of Christmas movies. I just watched something. Fuck, what is the movie? Was it Home Alone?
Yeah, he's Home Alone.
Home Alone. Yeah, he did some. What else? He did a couple things, right? Christmas wise too.
Yeah, he's a writer originally. As far as Christmas stuff that he did, he directed Home Alone. He directed Home Alone 2. He directed 2 of the Harry Potters, which always seem to have some kind of Christmas shit in them. He directed a newer movie called The Christmas Chronicles Part 2, but that's
all over Netflix.
He also wrote Christmas with the Cranks.
Oh.
Homeboy loves some fucking Christmas. He was a producer on Jingle All the Way.
Yeah, they talked about that in that. I want to say, was it that Movies That We Love thing about Christmas? That's how I know the Chris Columbus thing. But yeah, they said that that motherfucker, yeah, he loves Christmas.
Yeah,
he's like Ultramantis.
Yeah, he is. He is way the fuck into Christmas, and he has written a bunch of shit about Christmas. Directed a bunch of movies about Christmas. He's the writer on this. Jerry Goldsmith did the music. John Ora did the cinematography. Chris Wallace did the special effects, and it was produced and distributed by Warner Brothers and Amblin, which is Spielberg's company. So the idea behind Gremlins was conceived by Chris Columbus when he was in college still, kind of. He would hear noises at night in his apartment there was a mouse infestation in his apartment building.
Holy shit.
So at night when the lights would go out, he would hear all this noise of all these mice running around. And
that's creepy.
Yeah, and he thought that was pretty creepy. And that, along with some folklore that he had heard combined with a Bugs Bunny cartoon that he had seen, told him about the British folklore of gremlins, where they were these mischievous creatures during World War II that would cause malfunctions in RAF aircraft.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers made a Bugs Bunny cartoon about it.
So that's almost like early Chupacabras. Gremlins,
sort of.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, they were totally they were in that whole world of British folklore with fairies and all that shit too.
Yeah.
And it was originally written this whole script wasn't he didn't have the idea that it was going to get produced ever. It was a spec script to kind of show off his writing abilities. And Steven Spielberg saw it and took an interest in it. Said it was one of the most original things he had came across in all the years he had been making films, so he bought it. From there, Steven Spielberg decides it's not a movie for him to make. It's a movie for him to have made. And he tapped Joe Dante to direct the movie based on his experience with horror comedy. Joe Dante started his career working for Roger Corman. Have you seen many Roger Corman films?
His name isn't, but see, I don't know a lot of names. What did he do? Because I probably have, I just don't know it.
Roger Corman made every no-budget movie ever. Corman's infamous for making just the cheapest fucking no-budget science fiction shit in the 60s and the 70s, but he spawned a lot of people's careers. So for instance, Joe Dante started his career on a Roger Corman sort of Jaws knockoff called Piranha.
I've seen Piranha. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So he followed. There's a couple other Roger Corman tie-ins with this movie that we'll get to eventually. But yes, so Joe Dante starts on Piranha. He then co-directed Rock and Roll High School, which is a weird thing because there's not usually co-directors, but that movie rules.
I saw that recently. Well, not recently, but when I got Amazon Prime, and I'm pretty sure it's on there. And I was like, was that the fucking Ramon movie where they're in high school? And I watched that back again. I was like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah. I like Rock and Roll High School a lot.
It's a good movie.
After that, he did The Howling, and that's what really put him on the map as far as horror goes, and it's kind of what put him on the radar for Spielberg. He also did one part of the Twilight Zone movie in the 80s, which gave him a little bit of a working relationship with Spielberg. But Gremlins was the biggest film he had done up to that date. He would eventually do Inner Space, the movie about the people going inside someone's body.
Yeah.
The Burbs, the Gremlins.
One of the best movies ever. The
Burbs rules. Gremlins 2, Matinee, and Small Soldiers. He also did 2 episodes of the short-lived Masters of Horror series in the early 2000s. And he helped create the series Erie, Indiana.
I've heard that was good.
I liked it. It didn't. I don't know if it aged well, but I liked it.
Huh.
But yeah, dude, The Burbs is awesome.
The Burbs is a movie that I've seen, you know, like I said, you know, we're similar in age, and it was like an 80s movies that I'd seen. And you watch that movie, they just don't make movies like they used to back in the day. And The Burbs is a movie that holds up so fucking well, and it's just so goddamn funny that I made my fiance watch it at whatever point. We've been dating for a little bit, but for whatever reason it came up, and I was like, oh, you ever seen The Burbs? And she's like, no, what is this? And she's a little younger than me, so I'm like, oh, it's this movie with Tom Hanks. Like, we got to watch it. And she was like, oh, yeah, that's a fucking great movie. So, like, I don't know. Like, sometimes 80s movies don't go over well with people who didn't grow up in the 80s or a little younger, because sometimes it can be cheesier. They have this 80s effect. The Burbs is just it's a classic, dude. It's the best.
Oh, dude, I totally agree. And I know what you're talking about because Pam's a little bit younger than me, too. And I try to show her some stuff, and she'll be like, that looks janky. Like,
yeah, which I can understand saying, because I get the look what you mean by that, but I don't know if it's the nostalgia in me or I've seen it, but just a lot of 80s stuff hits a certain way for me.
Me too. And The Burbs to me is special. I like that movie a lot. I will eventually do it, even though that's like not really a horror movie. That's something that I'm eventually going to cover just because.
Yeah, that's a classic. I would say comedy horror, almost in the same vein as what Gremlins is. It covers the macabre and murderous stuff, you know? So, I mean, fuck.
Yeah. So the script for this was a little more macabre originally, and it kind of got dumbed down over time. It went through a few drafts before the shooting script was finalized. The original version was like way darker. Like there's a scene that was cut from the original script where Billy's mother dies in her struggle with the gremlins when she's fighting them. And when he comes home, they fucking bowl her head down the stairs.
Yo.
Yeah. There was also a scene.
Sweet if they kept that in.
There was also a scene where the gremlins ate the dog.
Yo, that's not cool.
No, you don't fuck with dogs, man.
No, man.
That was a big Spielberg, like, no, you can't. This scene's gotta go. We can't kill a dog in this movie. And there was another scene where they were gonna bust into a McDonald's and eat the customers instead of the burgers. And
interesting.
That got cut out of the movie too. So there was a Ronald's Place reference in it.
There you go.
Gizmo was also originally supposed to become Stripe.
Oh, see, and I've heard that before. Yeah, I've heard that theory, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, Spielberg
he becomes the leader.
Yeah, Spielberg shot that shit down. He was like, no, that thing's too cute, and audiences are gonna hate it if we turn him into Stripe. He's gonna be there to like fight against Stripe, and he was right.
Yeah.
Like, this movie would not be half as good if Gizmo turned into Stripe.
It also gives you the, then, because if he's bad, can you really come back with a 2? You got to really write some shit, or you got to do some mental gymnastics to write a 2 if he's bad. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think it's way easier to have the sequel, if he's your hero.
Right. I don't know that there was originally the plan for the sequel, but you're absolutely right. Like, if he dies, there's no sequel to this movie. That ticket never gets punched.
I got to think that Spielberg saw that little fucking animatronic gizmo and went, cha-ching, we're doing at least 2 of these fuckers.
Yeah, and we'll get to it in a second, but he had a lot to do with the look of Gizmo, too. Spielberg's a smart guy sometimes. The studio also wanted to cut the story Kate tells about her dad dying in the chimney.
Yeah. That's Jonah. That's his favorite. Like we've talked about Gremlins before, and he always brings it up because you talk about it was like fucked up. That is fucked up, dude.
Yeah, they wanted that shit the fuck right out of this movie, and Joe Dante pushed back on it, and Steven Spielberg backed him. So it's
the weird part about it makes me think that there was other dark stuff in there, and so maybe that just kind of was going along with the rest of it, but the fact that they cut a bunch of stuff and then left that, so it's all pretty tame, and then she just tells this story. I don't know if you want to tell it, you want me to tell it, but what she says is fucking fucked up, dude, and you're just like, if you're paying attention, you're like, wait a minute, what did she just say? Why does she hate Christmas?
Yeah, there's a whole part about that in a minute.
Okay.
We'll cover that. The only thing I'll say is maybe, like, there is one other point where, like, when they're walking home and she's like, yeah, some people are opening presents and other people are opening their wrists.
Yikes.
So, like, there's a couple of moments with her where she's a real fucking downer at Christmas time.
Right?
So the next step after he's got his director on board is to put together the cast. There is some wild shit in this casting. Now, a lot of times I find stories about, like, oh, this person was up for a role and didn't get it, and there's a lot of, like, what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
This one I have no what ifs, but there's a whole lot of, like, holy shit, these people did all this stuff. The first one being Randy Peltzer, the dad, played by Hoyt Axton. He was an actor. His career was mostly in, like, TV one-shots. Like, he was on Bonanza. He was on I Dream of Jeannie, WKRP in Cincinnati.
Jeez.
Different strokes. He was the dad in Black Stallion, but Gremlins was his only big film, really. And he didn't get a lot of other films after it. But acting's not what most of his credits are for. He was a songwriter, and he owned a record label called Jeremiah Records in the 70s.
Okay.
He wrote a couple of pretty famous songs. One of them was the pusher for Steppenwolf, which was in Easy Rider.
Okay.
He also wrote Joy to the World for Three Dog Night.
Whoa.
Yeah, and his mother, Mae Axton, wrote Heartbreak Hotel for Elvis.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like, Joy to the World's a pretty big 70s hit. He made a lot of money off that. He also did commercials. He was in the original Big Mac commercial, not the 2 all-beef patties special sauce one that we remember, but like a weird 70s one about how Big Macs were for big men.
Now I want a Big Mac.
And see, more Ronald's Place references.
Think about that special sauce right now. Fuck.
I am not a special sauce guy, man.
Dude, that's my shit.
He also was the dude in the Head to the Mountains of Busch Beer.
Whoa.
Like, that's him. Yeah.
I can hear his voice right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the dad. That's the dad from Gremlins.
That rocks.
The grandfather, Mr. Wing, was Key Luke. He, like a lot of people in this film, have a lot of acting credits and a career that goes back really far. Like, there's a lot of old people in this movie, and a lot of them had acting careers that went back decades. In the case of Key, he had been in the movie industry for 50 years by the time he filmed Gremlins.
Jeez.
He started his career in 1935, playing Charlie Chan's son, Lee Chan, in all of the Charlie Chan films. Charlie Chan, for those who don't know, is pretty controversial for having a bunch of non-Asian people play the role in Yellowface.
Jeez,
Yeah, it was a different time, man. It was the 30s and the 40s. People weren't real fond in this country of certain people of certain places in those times.
We didn't have the internet. People didn't know.
It's true. It's
They
very
just
true.
heard stories of war.
Yeah.
So.
Propaganda was a thing. It was
That's right.
a real
It
thing.
still is. It's still very much
works real well.
But lately,
works real well. There's proof everywhere. Just look around. He worked in a lot of the early days of television on shit that I have only heard about, and it all seems silly to me, like the Chevron Theater and the Pepsi Cola Playhouse, like in the 50s. Like, his career is that fucking old. He was also the English voiceover voice in a bunch of Godzilla films, including Rodan.
Okay.
He also did a lot of one-offs. Like, his credit list is insane. It seems like any time in the 50s or 60s, if they needed an Asian man, they just called him. On the original Space Ghost cartoon, now not like the Space Ghost in the 90s and 2000s, but the old Space Ghost, he was the voice of Brack.
Oh, okay.
He was on an episode of Star Trek.
He's checking all the boxes, dude. This guy's making money.
For real. In the 70s, there was an animated Charlie Chan TV series called The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan, where he actually played Charlie Chan in a kind of full circle thing, also making him the only Asian man to ever play Charlie Chan. He was Master Po on Kung Fu.
That's what I knew. Yeah, I saw that picture as we're like looking, and I was like, I've seen that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't recognize him from the movie when I saw that. I was like, oh shit, it's Master Po.
He did a ton of voice acting for Filmation shows like Scooby-Doo, Thundar the Barbarian, Battle of the Planets, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and Gem. He was another one-shot guy, too, in the 70s and 80s. He was on, like, fucking everything. Quincy, Hunter, Charlie's Angels, MASH, Magnum P.I., A-Team, Miami Vice, Golden Girls, Night Court, MacGyver. He was in an episode of Friday the 13th, the TV series. But Gremlins and Gremlins 2 are the only major films he did through the 80s into the 90s, and he passed away in 1991, right after he had filmed Gremlins 2.
Rest in power, big dog.
Yeah, but that's a hell of a career, man. That dude
Hell yeah, dude.
Shit. Another dude who saw some shit is Harry Carey Jr. He played Mr. Anderson in the movie. He had been an active actor since the 40s and arguably since 1921 when he appeared on screen as a baby.
Wow.
Yeah. His credit list is dumb too, but most of it's shit that like even me as a fucking nerd have never heard of. Like it's a lot of it's like 50s TV series and shit. He was also on the Chevron Theater. He has 156 acting credits. He had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1960.
Wow.
Yeah. Like some of his highlights were Lone Ranger, The Rifleman, Rawhide, Have Gun Will Travel. Like, see a theme here? A lot of westerns.
Lone Ranger, one of my favorite bands.
Oh, yeah. How do you pluralize the Lone Ranger?
The look on his face when they play it on the radio and he's like, the Lone Ranger. Just the cringe on his fucking face. That's good acting.
I love that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So he was also on Lassie, Bonanza, The Virginian, Gunsmoke. His movie roles were a little more limited. He was Zeke in Back to the Future 3, which is the Western Back to the Future, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
He was Father Canavan in Exorcist 3, and his last big role was in one of my favorite movies. He was Marshall Fred White in Tombstone.
Yo.
Yeah.
What a great film.
Love that film. Murray Futterman, the Vietnam vet who likes to drunk drive his tractor around town.
Yeah, dude.
Is Dick fucking Miller. Are you familiar with Dick Miller?
For whatever reason, I only recognize him from Gremlins. He wasn't striking. I'm not striking a chord with him for some reason.
So his career started in the 50s. He was a Roger Corman guy. He's the other Roger Corman connection here. He has 184 credits to his name.
Okay.
And he's a guy that I could talk about for fucking hours. He's been in other movies that I've covered on here before. He was in Night of the Creeps. He played a character called Walter Paisley in a movie called A Bucket of Blood. And
yeah, I was just going to say, I see he was in that. He was in Chopping Mall. I've seen him before. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, and he kind of replays that same character in a bunch of movies, like in Twilight Zone and Chopping Mall. He was in Death Race 2000. He was in Piranha. He was in Rock and Roll High School, The Howling.
Yeah.
He was in White Dog. Have you ever seen White Dog?
That I have not, no.
White Dog is about a racist dog.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. He was in Terminator. He was in The Burbs. He's in Gremlins 2. Joe Dante.
What did he play in The Burbs?
I don't remember. I could look it up.
I wonder what. Yeah, I wonder what. I have to think of it now.
1 second. I'm gonna look up who he was in the fucking Burbs. He was a garbage man.
I was just gonna say. I was getting to it. It's the scene when they're looking through the garbage and he's pulling all the shit out, and
yeah,
in the middle of the street when he's like, "You're looking through garbage."
Yeah, man. Dick Miller rules. He fucking worked in films all the way up through 2019. He passed away last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Dick.
Yeah, he's the best, man. Billy Peltzer was Zach Galligan. Now, unlike a bunch of people we just talked about, this was Zach's first film. He also did the Gremlins sequel. He did Waxworks and its sequel, Waxwork 2 Lost in Time. He was an uncredited victim in Hellraiser 3, and he was in an episode of Tales from the Crypt. And at some point right around then, he thought that he was getting typecast for doing horror films. So he stepped away from it, and that doesn't seem to have worked out well for him because, I mean, he still was in some shit, but he didn't get, I think a lot of the work he thought he was going to. He eventually came back to horror and did role in Hatchet 3, but he's still an active actor. There's not a lot to say about him.
Waxwork 2 was one of the biggest piece of shits I've ever watched.
It's real bad.
That movie sucked ass, dude.
Dude, they tried to make a Waxwork 3, and he said no.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that was when he thought he had been typecast. I think what happened was people saw Waxwork 2 and were like, I think Gremlins was a fluke. I don't think this can act.
No kidding.
The original Waxwork isn't even that good.
It's
better than 2.
Passable, but Waxwork 2 is a real piece of shit. Waxwork 2 is a movie you remember how bad it, Waxwork, whatever, but 2, you're like, oh yeah, that movie sucked ass.
Yeah, it sure does. Frances Lee McLean played Lynn, his mom. She had a hot run of about 3 years where she was in just everything that made money. She was in Footloose before Gremlins. She was in Gremlins the same year. In 85, she was in Back to the Future. In 86, she was in Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Then she didn't do a goddamn thing again until Scream in 95. And then she was in Patch Adams in 98.
Why was that show? It's saying It Takes Two. Why does that movie feel? Why did I feel like that movie? Why am I remembering that? Maybe it was a different movie because this one is not what I'm thinking of. But yeah, maybe that was a different movie. Because I thought that was a popular movie, but that wasn't the one I'm thinking of. But she was in Scream. What the hell was she in Scream?
She was a mom in Scream, Mrs. Riley.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
She was also in the Preacher TV series recently. And she did a spot on Better Call Saul. So, I mean, she's still actively working. She's a badass in Gremlins, though.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a good character in this movie.
Another good character is Polly Holliday's character, mean as fuck Mrs. Deagle. Polly was famous for playing Flo on the TV series Alice and her own spinoff Flo with her catchphrase, "Kiss my grits."
Kiss my grits.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
You remember Alice? Is that too
old?
Slightly,
but just because it's just one of those things that you remember being a little kid, like shows like Mama's Family or All in the Family, shows like that. Like I remember them, but I couldn't tell you. I know that they're a thing, and when I see those people, I'm like, yeah, I know that, but I couldn't tell you much about them.
Yeah, dude, I'm sort of the same thing. Like, I have a fuzzy memory of Alice existing and being on TV. I just remember that there was, like, the boss who was, like, a creepy dude, like, just, like, a lecherous dude. And, like, I remember Flo saying, "Kiss my grits," and that's, like, the extent of what I remember about that show. She ended up playing some role in Mrs. Doubtfire, and she was in the Lindsay Lohan version of The Parent Trap. She also had a small recurring role as Patricia Richardson's mom on Home Improvement. Yeah. But she quit acting around 2010. And that's pretty much all for her. The next guy is the science teacher, Roy Hansen, played by Glenn Turman. Glenn Turman is a guy that I'm familiar with because he was in some movies I like. He began his career doing blaxploitation films like Honky, Five on the Black Hand Side, and Cooley High. Dude, I love Cooley High. He auditioned to be Han Solo in the original Star Wars.
Whoa.
And, dude, yeah. Like, imagine that shit. That would have been so cool. He did a lot of guest spots on TV in the 70s, but after Gremlins, he landed himself a recurring role on the Cosby Show spinoff A Different World as Army Colonel Bradford Taylor.
Great
now,
show.
Dude, I loved A Different World when I was a kid. I liked it way more than the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
The theme song to that show was sung by his ex-wife, Aretha Franklin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
He continued to act. Like, he's been in a ton of stuff all through the 90s and the 2000s. The most recent big stuff he's done, and I watched both of these shows, and at no point did I put together that this guy was that guy. But he was Mayor Clarence Royce on The Wire.
Yeah.
And he was
he was in that. I was like, well, The Wire? I don't fucking remember him.
Yeah, he was the mayor. He was also Dr. Senator on the newest season of Fargo, which is fucking amazing.
I haven't gotten into that yet. Fargo was something I wanted to get into, but I haven't.
Dude, that newest season of Fargo, you don't even have to have seen the other ones. Like, if you have, there are, like, little cool Easter egg things. But you can watch that shit standalone, and it is solid. It is really good.
Interesting.
Gerald Hopkins, Judge Reinhold, or as his father calls him, Edward Ernest Reinhold Jr., actually, his dad probably calls him Judge. He gave him the nickname when he was a baby. He's the next guy in this movie. The 80s were pretty fucking good to Judge Reinhold.
Yeah, he was a beast. That's for sure.
He was in Stripes. He was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High before Gremlins. The same year as Gremlins, he's Billy Rosewood in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
Before the decade's over, he does Beverly Hills Cop 2. He does Ruthless People. He does Vice Versa. In 94, he does the much less good Beverly Hills Cop 3 and Santa Claus, which recently you guys talked about on your show. He really gets shit on the Santa Claus, man.
Everyone in the whole movie is just so fucking mean to Judge Reinhold the whole time. And like Ed said, he's fucking right. These lunatics are ranting and raving about a fucking Santa Claus. And like, you're supposed to believe him. No, we live in reality. And then, nope, they don't. They bring it back to sci-fi because there's like flying and shit. So you're like, well, I guess this isn't reality. But yeah, everyone's mean to Judge Reinhold. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, and after Santa Claus, he doesn't get like much high-profile work. He does the sequel. And then in something that I think is fucking amazing, on both Arrested Development and Clerks the Animated Series, he plays the Honorable Judge Reinhold.
Interesting.
He did his own voice for the Clerks cartoon. Speaking of the Clerks cartoon, I haven't talked about it a lot, but starting next month, there is going to be a third feed on this channel. I guess that's how you would say it.
Yeah.
A third show that is just going to be covering Kevin Smith projects. It's just going to run for a year, and it's going to cover everything that he wrote or was like directly involved with. It's not, basically, I'm not doing Cop Out. I'm not doing Cop Out. I'm not doing Yoga Hosers. But everything else is getting covered, and you are going to be on the second episode talking about Mallrats.
That kid is back on the escalator again. Hope his pants get caught in a bloodbath ensues. Oh, I love that goddamn movie so much.
I do too. I'm real excited to do that. I'm not going to say who the other person is on that episode with us, but every episode's going to be 2 people. Jonah's doing the Clerks episode. Ed is doing 2 episodes. He's doing Jersey Girl and Clerks 2. So there's some heavy PodVanDam representation in the series. But it's going to be good, man. I'm real excited about it.
You know, as if people don't get enough of all of our voices to, you know, we just keep pumping it out, baby.
Right. Ed will damn near be on as many shows as me on this fucking feed.
Yeah, he is. He's on a lot of stuff.
So Judge Reinhold's Fast Times co-star, Phoebe Cates, plays Kate. It dawned on me when I was looking through this that Judge Reinhold spent a lot of time in the early 80s on film obsessing about Phoebe Cates.
Yeah, do you think she was weirded out about that? Like, yeah, right, exactly. There's a few 80s movies where he's like a weirdo to her. She's just like...
Yeah, it's kind of weird casting, right?
Yeah, maybe they were good friends, so she was like, well, if we need a guy to be weird, I guess we could call Judge. He's pretty good at it.
Yeah, I mean, he was good at it. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
She started her career modeling in magazines like 17 and stuff. For as much of an icon as she was in the 80s, her list of films is super fucking short. Like, there's some stuff that I won't mention just because they're kind of like forgotten, unimportant films. But she was in Fast Times, she was in the 2 Gremlins movies, and she was in Drop Dead Fred. And that's pretty much it. And she's
like Drop Dead Fred is like one of those movies too that like people that like that, like you either love that movie or kind of hate it. And people really, a lot of people like that movie. That was a big movie, I think. I don't know. It was like a popular.
And so I don't know if it was really popular at the time or if it's one of those things that have kind of over time became this thing. You know what I mean? Because I know
cult classic.
Yeah. I know a bunch of people who love that movie. I'm kind of indifferent. Like, I don't hate it or anything, but I'm not like obsessed with it. Some people are like crazy obsessed with that movie. But she had that iconic swimming pool scene in Fast Times that I think will be like replayed forever. Like, she will always in some way be an icon of the 80s. She ended up marrying Kevin Kline and basically retired from film. Just became a mom.
Huh. Yeah, I guess that's the way to go.
The next person is kid in a Christmas tree suit, Corey Feldman. I just talked about Corey a bunch on the last episode about his other 1984 film, Friday the 13th Final Chapter. Mm-hmm. So if you really want a deep dig into old Corey, you can listen to the last episode. We talk about a lot of shit with him. His run of movies in the 80s is bookended by 2 Joe Dante films. It starts here with Gremlins and it runs through The Burbs in 89. There were only 5 years in that time period, which is crazy because he became a megastar. But in that time, he made 2 Friday the 13ths, The Goonies, Stand By Me, The Lost Boys, License to Drive, and The Burbs.
You're not going to count Dream a Little Dream, too?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, that was big for its time. It came out with the other Corey. I mean, that was big. They get big money, I think.
That was a Corey's movie. Anything that was the Corey's made money. Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right.
I mean, then he was a voice, too, in Turtles.
He was, and that's the next thing I was going to say, is he's Donatello in the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. But, man, it's a quick drop-off from there.
Yeah.
Like, it goes downhill quick.
His line, his character in Burbs, to keep going back to Burbs, his character in the Burbs is one of the best characters in the movie. When he says to his friends, when he tries to get everyone not to leave, because he says the pizza guy's coming and like all the neighbors are going to start doing weird shit soon. He's like, no, don't leave. I got the pizza guy coming. Like, that is one of the best scenes to me for whatever reason. If you just take it for what it is, he's trying to convince his friends not to leave because some shit is about to go down, man. Like, you gotta trust it. And it fucking does, dude. It fucking does.
Man, this is just a big promo for the Burbs at this point,
I know,
which I'm
I
totally fine with.
I'm sorry, I keep bringing it up, but yeah, it keeps sneaking in there.
Oh no, man, it's fine. I'm all about more people should watch the Burbs. People should sit down this Christmas and have themselves a Gremlins Burbs back to back. They should watch both of those. So yeah, man, like Corey Feldman had a weird 90s, 2000s, 2010s, still having a weird one. He's shit ain't great for Corey, but he did that voice work. And speaking of voice work, the next guy we're going to talk about fucking blew my mind. Like I'm usually prepared in doing research to find some weird shit, right? Mm-hmm. Frank Welker did the voice of Stripe, some of the Mogwai, and some of the Gremlins. And so when you get to the Mogwai and the Gremlins, there are two people who have like super individual roles in doing Stripe and in doing Gizmo. But for the rest of them, they kind of had a team of people who made a bunch of the voices with the Mogwai and the Gremlins. Some of those are like Peter Cullen, who's the voice of Eeyore and Optimus Prime, and Michael Winslow from Police Academy.
Hell yeah.
Like, those dudes did some of the voices, but they were not the heavy hitters. And the main heavy hitter is also not Howie Mandel. Like, Howie Mandel, famous germaphobe and game show host, he had never done a voiceover prior to being asked to audition to be Gizmo. He ended up voicing Skeeter, Animal, and Bunsen on the Muppet Babies, and he did most of the voices on Bobby's World when he made it. He was Maurice in Little Monsters, and he was on St. Elsewhere in the 80s, which is kind of, aside from his stand-up, what got him famous, you know, aside from putting a fucking rubber glove on his head and blowing it up with his nose. But these days, most people, I think, just know him as, like, a game show host from Deal or No Deal.
Deal or No Deal. Say Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but that wasn't the one. It's Deal or No Deal.
Yeah, it was the one with the suitcases.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he sits around and tells a bunch of people if they're good or not at doing things on another show. Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Deal or No Deal.
Oh, no. I'm talking about America's Got Talent. But yeah. So that's Howie Mandel. Howie Mandel's, he's whatever. He's not always my cup of tea. But I think Little Monsters was fucking cool.
Little Monsters rocked. And I think Bobby's World I liked as a kid. I remember watching that as a kid being like, this is funny.
You know, and I never put together that the Gizmo voice and Bobby's World voice were the same voice, and they 100% are.
Yeah, I never did. I never really either until just reading it and thinking about that. Yeah, I never really did.
But Frank fucking Welker. A few people have done voice work, but none bigger than him. His name might not be familiar to you, but his voice certainly fucking is.
Oh, yeah.
He has a staggering 850 voice credits to his name, and he has been doing film and TV for decades. A couple of facts about Frank Welker. He is only the 6th actor to ever be in 2 films that grossed $1 billion each.
Holy shit.
The revenue of the total films that he has been in is over $12 billion.
Wow.
This is going to be a long list, but I feel it's worth mentioning.
Oh, yeah.
Frank is the voice of Fred in Scooby-Doo. He has done that voice over 200 times since 1969 in every Scooby-Doo cartoon except for a pup named Scooby-Doo. He also, after the original Scooby-Doo voice actor quit doing the voice, took over doing the voice of Scooby-Doo. He is 8 of the original 14 Decepticons on the Transformers, including Megatron, Soundwave, and all of the little cassettes.
Soundwave's the best one.
Absolutely. He voiced Furball, Calamity Coyote, and Go-Go Dodo on Tiny Toons. He was Timber, Wild Bill, and Rock and Roll on G.I. Joe. He was Iceman on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. He was Darkseid on Super Friends. He was Dr. Claw, Brain, and Mad Cat on Inspector Gadget. Damn. He was Hefty and Poet Smurf. He was Bubba the Cave Duck and 2 of the Beagle Brothers on DuckTales. He was Ray Stantz and Slimer on The Real Ghostbusters. He was Kermit, Skeeter, and Beaker on The Muppet Babies, Bo, Booker, and Sheldon on U.S. Acres from Garfield and Friends. He's Nibbler in Futurama. He's Santa's little helper on The Simpsons. He did voices on GoBots, Centurions, Sectars, Pound Puppies, Heathcliff, Snorks, Dino Riders, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Gummy Bears, Tailspin, Goof Troop, Aladdin, Darkwing Duck, Captain Planet, Gargoyles, Freakazoid, Animaniacs, Clerks the Animated Series, Dexter's Laboratory, Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, Harvey Birdman, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. He was the English dub voice for Totoro in My Neighbor Totoro.
Totoro.
Totoro? Sorry.
I was just gonna say no. I was reading through it and I'm like, holy shit, he was in that, because like my fiance likes a lot of the Studio Ghibli stuff. My daughter likes all that Studio Ghibli stuff. So I was like, holy shit, he was in Totoro.
Yeah. He's the English dub voice in Totoro.
Yeah.
He's the Gopher in Caddyshack 2. He's the voice of the Munchies in Munchies. He was the voice of the Thing in The Golden Child.
Oh.
He's Toka and Razor in Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze.
Holy shit. The two fucking things they make, the mutant things. Hell yeah.
Yeah, he's the alien general in Suburban Commando. He's the voice of the dog in Hudson Hawk. He is Station, the devil, and the evil Easter Bunny in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Station!
Yeah. He's the reindeer in the Santa Claus. He's Shao Kahn and Reptile in the Mortal Kombat movie. He does a bunch of voices in Jumanji. He's the Axe for the aliens in Mars Attacks. And he was the voice of the motherfucking Grimace from Ronald's Place from 1971 to 2009.
Wow. Holy shit. And if he's the Axe, that means he's part Hillary Clinton on the Howard Stern show, because Fred always plays the no, who is it? Eric. They do it over Eric, not Hillary Clinton. Why did I say Hillary? Eric.
I think it's fair.
Dude, that guy's a legend.
Eric. I think it's fair to compare Eric to Hillary Clinton. I think that's
I thought
fair.
that. I swear maybe he's done that over one of her speeches too. For some reason, made me think that. But he always pulls the ack for Eric. That's why I know that. But dude, that was a fucking list. Holy shit.
Yeah, dude. There's a lot to unpack there. Like, it's
that guy's got
like
some money.
It's my whole childhood.
Yeah.
And I would have never figured out that all of those voices were the same dude.
No, because it's such a variety. Like, yeah. Holy shit.
I mean, some of them, like Dr. Claw and Soundwave and some of that shit, are all like in the same wheelhouse, so to speak.
Yeah.
But man, yeah, it's so much shit. Frank Welker, the guy you've never heard of that did everything fucking ever. So that's the cast. That's after that long. That was much longer than usually the cast part is, but there were some heavy hitters in there that were kind of like sleeper heavy hitters.
Yeah.
The special effects were the next thing that had to be handled. And for that, Chris Wallace was tapped. He brought the Gremlins to life. And there was an early attempt where they weren't going to have animatronic Gremlins. They tried to use monkeys in suits.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That'd be cool if there's film of that somewhere that you could see going really wrong.
Man, I wish there was, because all accounts are it went really fucking wrong. Like, not only were the monkeys kind of uncooperative, once they had to put the little masks on to be gremlins, shit just went way wrong.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so monkeys were abandoned as quickly as the idea came up.
Wouldn't you love to be in that meeting? Here it is. Guys, what if we put monkeys in suits to be the gremlins? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't even understand how anybody thought that was a workable idea.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
Like, imagine these people were in a meeting with Steven Spielberg. Like,
right? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, Steven, we think if we just put, some fucking monkeys in suits, this should work out just fine. They'll take direction. It'll be great.
Just give them cigarettes.
Yeah. No. So he also has ties to Roger Corman. He started his career on Piranha. He also did Humanoids from the Deep. He created the melting Nazi face effect for Raiders of the Lost Ark. And just before Gremlins, and I think this probably helped seal the deal for him getting the Gremlins job, he worked on Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Which, you know, that had a couple of cute little creatures in it. And if you think about it, Salacious Crumb, I know you're not a Star Wars guy, but picture Jabba the Hutt, right?
Yeah.
Picture the little dude that's hanging out next to him, like sort of by his little bomb.
With the weird things that come off his head, or the little animal creature with the little hair thing that goes ha 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 and like laughs.
A little animal creature.
Okay, yeah, I got you. Yep, I know him.
That thing looks like it's in like the Gremlins world.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of that in this, but yeah, he worked on Return of the Jedi on creatures, and he would go on to do special effects on a movie I love, Enemy Mine. He would also do all the effects on The Fly, House 2, Arachnophobia, Naked Lunch, and they let him direct The Fly 2.
Dude, House and House 2 were sick movies.
Yes. House and House 2 are both fucking great movies.
Yeah.
I love the first one's great. It's like half the cast of Cheers is in that fucking movie.
Right.
Naked Lunch is also a fucking great movie.
That one's not ringing a bell for me for some reason.
Naked Lunch is fucking weird, man. It's a really fucking weird movie. So he based his designs for the Gremlins and for the Mogwai off drawings that Chris Columbus had done. The look of Gizmo was also influenced by Spielberg. Spielberg owned King Charles Cavalier dogs and told him he wanted Gizmo to look like those. And if you think about it, his coloring is exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. He's
now,
a cute little bastard.
He is a very cute little bastard. He is very much, like I said earlier when you mentioned the Mandalorian, like he is the original Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
The original thing that like was so cute everybody wanted one. Some of that look was based on functionality, especially with the Gremlins. Like the Gremlin arms are really long because they knew that they were going to have to hold things and be grabbing things throughout the movie. And the legs are short to make it easier to show them walking, because apparently legs are a very difficult thing in puppets and animatronics, especially that early on, like in 84. So, like, for example, Gizmo couldn't walk. They couldn't make the puppet do it. It just wasn't a thing that was able to be done with something that small. But some of the Gremlins could. And the design was based around that. The big ears were also a design carryover to show an association between the Mogwai and the Gremlin, like for once the change happens. Yeah. But it also helped them show mood and expression in the puppets, because the faces weren't for the Gremlins. Some of the faces were able to show expression, but on the Gizmo puppet, it was not. Like the Gizmo puppet was too small to be able to show expressions. So as a solution, they made a really fucking big Gizmo that had a removable face, and they would just rip one face off and put another one on. So if it's like a scene that they're filming a close-up for where Gizmo's happy, a fucking happy face goes on. And then it moves and does its thing. And then if he's scared, they rip that one off and the fucking frowny face goes on. Which has to be the creepiest looking puppet in the world.
All right.
But it was much bigger, and it also means that for some of the scenes, they had to make like extra large props of things, like giant food and shit. Like when the Mogwai eat the chicken wings and stuff. Yeah, they so there was a bunch of that kind of shit that was swapped out for close-ups. Also, since the Gizmo puppet couldn't walk, the backpack was used as a solution, not only to cover the fact that the puppet couldn't walk, but to hide a lot of the mechanics that made him work. There were like dozens of cables that came out of the ass end of that puppet. And like when there are scenes where Zach Galligan's holding Gizmo and he's not in the backpack, he would have wires that were taped to his body running all the way down and through and out the bottom of his sock. And then there's a team of people working and pulling triggers on these different wire controllers to make Gizmo move and work.
Damn.
Because he was so small and because he was so complex, the Gizmo broke a lot. Like, and when it broke, it would be like 6-8 hour breaks in production.
Jeez.
Yeah. The crew sort of hated the Gizmo puppet. And there was a list of ways, like people would add things to a list that was on set of ways they wanted to see the Gizmo puppet tortured by the Gremlins.
Oh my God.
In the bar scene, when the scene where he's stuck to the dartboard, that was the one that won the crew vote for how they wanted to see Gizmo tortured on film. The dog in the movie thought the Gizmo puppet was fucking real.
Oh yeah.
And I guess it took a long time for the dog to get comfortable with the puppet. Now, there were a few Gizmos made, but there were hundreds of Gremlin puppets made, with varying degrees of sophistication, and a lot of them were built for specific roles and specific scenes. But one Gremlin that wasn't a specific puppet was Stripe. That is not the same puppet in every scene. They just made a removable mohawk.
Wow.
And they just
threw the hawk on him.
Yep. So they were able to put it on whatever Gremlin they needed to.
Yeah, because I mean, you're not gonna know. It's got the mohawk. It's him.
Yeah, dude. I would say it's been over a year now, because this year has been forever. So it might have been like 2 years ago. A bunch of the original Gremlins puppets went up for sale in an auction.
Wow.
And I remember when I saw it, I was like, man, that's a lot of fucking puppets. And now I understand why, because they made just, hundreds of them. So the idea that there are a bunch that are still existing is not crazy. And some of them were like marionette style. Some of them were wire, different levels of animatronics and stuff. The film had a pretty long shoot schedule, but most of it was not with the actors. It was 3 weeks of shooting with actors and 2 months of just Gremlins. The exception to that being they brought Phoebe Cates back for the weird bar scene that doesn't make any sense. It was shot in Burbank on the Universal lot and the Warner Brothers back lot. Being set at Christmas time, it needed snow, right?
Yes.
So the snow in the movie, if it was in the air, it was potato flakes. If it was on the ground or on something, it was shredded vinyl and foam.
Whoa.
Yeah. Many of the sets for Gremlins might look familiar to you. The stairs down to the shop where he gets Gizmo are the exact same set from the upside down kiss scene in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Oh.
Billy's neighborhood, where his family's house was and where he's outside fucking with that V-dub all the time, was Wisteria Lane on Desperate Housewives. The thing is, that neighborhood gets used a lot. Other houses in his neighborhood included the Delta House from Animal House, the Leave It to Beaver house, and the Munsters house.
Oh, the Munsters house? Isn't that house pink?
The Munsters house?
Inside of the Munsters house, everything is pink.
I didn't know that.
Because of the black and white and the way the color translated, like through the black and white, everything in the Munsters house is pink. It's like a light pink.
That's a fucking cool fact I did not know.
That's why you had me on this damn thing.
There's a real similar thing to that is like there's a guitar color called TV Yellow that Gibson did in the 50s that was because of black and white. Yeah. TV Yellow showed up as white.
There you go.
The most familiar part of Kingston Falls is Kingston Falls itself. Now, a year later, everyone would know that same downtown area under a different name. Hill Valley.
Yep.
It is the Back to the Future town. Like the bank in Gremlins is the coffee shop in Back to the Future. If you look, you can see the clock tower in Gremlins.
No shit.
Yeah. It's the exact same thing. Back to the Future used the same set. which I guess is a common thing in Hollywood, like studio films.
Sure.
But I think it's wild that like within a year it was, you know, that pretty iconic downtown in Gremlins that gets blown up, and then it's also the Back to the Future Hill Valley downtown.
Yeah, Hill Valley, man, that's legendary.
We've talked about Ronald's Place a couple times, but in that downtown, did it ever seem weird to you that there's that Burger King that's just like part of the downtown? Like, I've never seen a Burger King that wasn't just like a standalone Burger King, unless it was in like New York City.
Yeah, I always thought that had like, did they ever like do something with like, was there like a Burger King meal with Gremlin? Was that like a tie-in for some reason? I always wondered that. I'm sure there were like glasses or something, because there had to be, every movie had that shit back then. Like, there was, I mean, I know there was a Gremlin cereal. Yeah, dude, I remember that. Holy shit, Gremlin cereal. That is like, shit gets tapped in your brain that has been like dormant for like 30 years, and someone says something and you're like, holy fuck.
Yeah. But I mean, that was a thing in the 80s too. Like, everything had a fucking cereal. But
cereal,
cereal.
Right. Everything had cereal. It's starting, you know what though is weird, is it's starting to be that way again, man. There are cereals for stuff nowadays, and I'm like, what the fuck? There is Baby Shark cereal. like there are cereals for just a lot of random shit lately, especially because we're starting to get into the weird pop culture type of shit where, you know, there's just internet shit. Not everything has to be a show or this or that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about what kids are into now, but I'd imagine most of it's YouTube.
Watching other kids play video games or open presents or open toys and play with toys. That's what a lot of kids like, I guess.
So fucking weird. And that shit's been going on for a while, because I remember my friend Nathan, his son Ari is got to be in like late teens now.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was like 8, 9 years old, he used to watch videos of kids playing video games, and all of us didn't understand it. We were like, you have a Wii right there. Like,
yeah,
play the Wii. And it wasn't like he was watching how to like beat a level or anything, or like how to do something. He was just watching. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna watch these kids play a video game. So weird.
It's a new thing, man. I don't get it either.
I'm an old man. I don't understand it. So there are things in this movie that I think would probably make more sense if part of this movie hadn't been cut. Like, we talked about scenes that were cut before the movie was ever made. Mm-hmm. There were scenes that were filmed that got cut right the fuck out of this movie too. One of them is the very beginning of this movie is different. Like, this movie kind of starts now with the kid just being like, oh yeah, come down to my grandpa's store, right?
Mm-hmm.
The original opening starts with him in a different store in Chinatown with this lady behind the counter who keeps trying to sell him like bullshit as he's trying to sell her his like invention bullshit.
Yeah, whatever he invented or whatever.
Yeah, and he's talking about how he needs to get a gift for his kid, and she tries to sell him like I don't know, like a weird watch or some shit. And that little kid is in the store and it's like, oh no, you need to come to my grandpa's store. So that scene gets cut out. That doesn't change a lot. There's also a scene where Billy gets yelled at for being 17 minutes late by the guy who runs the bank and Judge Reinhold.
Mm-hmm.
That's cut out of the movie. There's another scene where Kate and Billy break into the bank manager's office and find out that the bank's been working with Mrs. Deagle to foreclose on houses, including the houses of Kate and Billy's parents.
Yikes.
And then Judge Reinhold busts in and fucking catches them looking at the shit and tries to blackmail her into a date.
Whoa.
Yeah, that gets cut. Stripe sees a group of Christmas carolers, which explains that other weird scene where there are gremlins Christmas caroling. But that's cut out of the film. Also, there's a scene where Dick Miller is talking to his wife, and you find out that what Mrs. Deagle did in town was she ran the noodle factory. And she closed the shit down, and that's why everybody's out of work.
Can't make no more noodles.
Yeah, noodle factory's done, man. Me and old Miss Deagle shut that shit down. Also, once the gremlins are everywhere and like tearing the town up, Billy and Kate go back to the bank, and like part of that's still in the movie, but what's not in the movie anymore is that they find Mr. Corbin dead.
Whoa.
And they find Gerald has locked himself in the bank vault.
He's like, fuck it.
Yeah, and is trying to ride the thing out, and because then he'll get to run the bank, right?
Yeah. That might be a safe spot, though, the vault.
The vault was smart, man. I mean,
what if they burn the building down? Then you could burn alive, like you'd be suffocated / like from the smoke or whatever in there or whatever, you know?
Yeah, he rolled those dice, though, man.
Yeah.
Seemed like a plan. He was still also in that scene. Like, it's all that stuff's on like the Blu-ray special features, which there aren't a lot of. You can see those scenes. He also tries to be a creep there too. Like, Judge Reinhold's character is very much a creep through this whole fucking movie. So the movie gets released at what I think is a fucking weird time. Gremlins is released in North America on June 8th, 1984. The exact same day as Ghostbusters.
Damn, really?
Yeah.
Back to back, like head to head, huh?
Yeah, head to head. It came in just a little under Ghostbusters. So Gremlins' budget was $11 million. It covered that its opening weekend, bringing in $12.5 million, and a very close second to Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters just edged it out. But yeah, that summer was wild. A whole bunch of shit comes out in the summer of 84. A whole bunch of shit comes out in 84 in general. 84 is a wild year for movies. But yeah, those two went head to head, and Temple of Doom had been not long before them either. So there was a time in 84 where if you were going to the movies, because movies also stayed in the theater way longer then, you had the option to go see like Temple of Doom, Ghostbusters, and Gremlins, like all at the same time in a movie theater.
Jeez.
Yeah. It actually ended its theatrical run on November 29th. Now, what I also think is weird about that is, yeah, I guess so it had been in the theaters for like 6 months at that point, but like now it's Christmas. Like, you would think they would have just let it run through Christmas because some more people might be like, oh, I want to see Gremlins at Christmas time.
Yeah, or like people that hadn't seen it are like, well, let's go. Christmas movie, let's go.
I don't know that a lot of people hadn't seen it. By that point, it grossed $148 million. Now,
wow.
Keep in mind that's 80s dollars. So those are worth like 3-ish based on inflation and whatnot. Yeah. So it'd be about 3 times that. Also, there were way less theaters then. So it made a lot more per theater. It ended up being the 4th highest grossing film that year behind Beverly Hills Cop, Temple of Doom, and Ghostbusters. Worldwide, it took in $212.9 million in theaters.
Worldwide!
Who will also be on that Kevin Smith series. I think the release as a summer blockbuster is still fucking strange to me because this is a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Joe Dante says it's not. We talked about it earlier. He says that it's not a Christmas movie because people will watch it year round, not just at Christmas.
Which is true. I do watch Gremlins year round. I don't feel like I have to put it on around Christmas time. It comes in handy if you're watching Christmas movies because it takes place. But I wouldn't say a pigeonhole it to just Christmas. But it is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I think so too. And like we talked about earlier, Spielberg says it's not a horror movie. I don't think you can have this many people die or microwave a fucking monster and have it not be a horror movie. It was released on VHS, Beta, CED, and video disc in 85. Have you ever seen a CED? Do you know what those are?
That's what I was going to ask. What the fuck is a CED?
CEDs fucking rule. And to watch one sucks. The way they work, what they look like is like a big 3.5 floppy disk.
Okay.
Like, they have really cool art on the outside of them. They're like a big plastic cartridge. And they have like a fucking data disk on the inside of them, sort of like an old floppy disk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it had the movie on it, and they had these players that had literally had like a needle that read the fucking movie off these discs. The players are really hard to calibrate. Like, I tried to Like I bought, like finding one that's functional is fucking rough and you'll pay a lot of money. Back in like the 2000s, I bought a couple off eBay that said they just needed some work, and I did a bunch of research of like how to like fix them and calibrate them, and I eventually gave up because I didn't have the skills to fucking do it.
It became more work than you wanted to watch a movie.
Yeah, and for the quality is not like crazy good. Like I mean, it's basically the same quality as like a VHS tape. But the idea behind them was really cool, and I own a couple of them as just like art. Like I have a Texas Chainsaw collection, and I own Texas Chainsaw on CD.
Sure.
Yeah. So they look fucking cool as shit, but to actually watch something on it is not that cool. And then video disc or laser disc is what it is, and it's been easily replaced by DVD and then Blu-ray. But Gremlins made $79.5 million in rental stores.
I feel like Gremlins was a big movie for renting. Like you go to the video store to rent it. Like the 80s were a golden time for that shit. So like I feel, yeah, that number to me, I feel like that was probably Gremlins was probably checked out often at your local video store.
Right, and that's still in a time when, and I've talked about this on here before too, a VHS tape was expensive in 85.
Yeah.
Like it was like $80 for a movie. It wasn't like $20 at the store. That shit didn't really come along until like the 90s.
Oh, if you lost a videotape early on, like, you were fucked.
Oh yeah, or if your fucking player ate it or something.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Gremlins has also been merchandised like crazy.
Sure.
Starting all the way back then with LJN putting out toys. And now, like all the way to today, you can go to Target and there are NECA figures of Gremlins on the shelf right now.
I have the one of Gizmo where it has the different faces of Gizmo and stuff.
Yeah.
My fiance got it for me last year, the year before for Christmas. And it's fucking great. It's a great doll.
Yeah, they rule, man. I can't imagine how much money Spielberg has made off of Gremlins, but it's just got to be fucking staggering.
Because you're talking 80s too, which is prime time which is one of the things I have. Thrift store gave me lunchbox thermos type shit. Those 80s lunchboxes, everybody had like one of those metal lunchboxes. So dude, that was huge for the Gremlins, dude. Everybody, I have a Gremlins lunchbox like that. You know what I mean? Like everybody had one of those things.
Dude, and the 80s had that, like there's that weird line where like all the kids had the metal lunchboxes, and then sometime in like the late 80s, everybody had the plastic versions, and then they re-put all that shit back out on those plastic ones.
Yep.
And like Trapper Keepers and all sorts of like licensed shit. Like Spielberg has made an insane amount of money on Gremlins.
I want to say that Gremlins were used for it was like crossover too, like for an insurance company in the 90s or something like that. Like, you make sure you're protected, and I forget, but I swear I remember seeing like a resurgence of Gremlins like after years prior or years after.
Dude, I have a memory of that. There was some sort of tie-in with that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you for sure what it was.
But I mean, Spielberg had to get paid, the production, whatever. Somebody got paid for that. You can't just be like, hey, we're going to use the Gremlins.
Right.
Got to cut that check.
Fuck yeah. Another thing with Gremlins too, and this mattered way more in the 80s, and I've talked about it before, is critics fucking loved this film. Siskel and Ebert, who hated last month's film, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, so much so that Roger Ebert had a goddamn meltdown on TV. They loved Gremlins. And that went a long way to getting people into the theaters back then. It did, however, have some detractors. Most of those were based on its initial rating, which was PG. This movie and Temple of Doom were both PG movies because at the time, the only ratings were G, PG, R, and X. And Gremlins is responsible, along with Temple of Doom, for causing the MPAA to create PG-13.
Yeah.
And later that summer, Red Dawn was the first film to come out in August as a PG-13 film. But the gremlin exploding in the microwave was cited as the influence. Because figure, at that point, like, it had the same rating as, like, a bunch of kids' movies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having the thought now of him exploding in that microwave. It's just, I was hungry for Ronald's Blast and wanted that Big Mac, and I don't anymore.
Just all that green goop splattered all over the inside.
Yeah.
Dude, whatever the rating is, though, people love this fucking movie. It's 85% certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes still.
Yeah, I mean, Rotten Tomatoes is a pretty good, like, judge for, because I mean, there's plenty of movies on there that didn't do shit in the theater, but then that's got a great rating on there or whatever.
Right, because it's kind of an aggregate of, like, what people actually think of the movie, you know?
Right.
So we've talked a lot about how this fucking movie got made. Dude, what's your favorite parts of Gremlins?
The part recently, one of the funniest parts is because Jonah keeps bringing it up, and I guess it never really dawned on me at the first handful of viewings of always watching this movie, hearing her say and really explain. I always just glossed over it. Then in the last handful, 2 or 3 times of watching it, when she tells that story about her dad, I'm like, you're just like, wait, what? And it's so like, did we just hear that right? And it's so fucking weird to me that either that or the scene where they're all in the bar scene, those two, I guess if I had to do top 3, the other scene that I think is my favorite is when they're in the movie theater, the glasses. They're eating that popcorn. A friend of mine recreated that on a big silk screen. He made a big canvas, like a 8x8 canvas of that.
Oh, that rules.
Yeah, I should try and see if I can get him to send me a picture and send it to you. But that just scene where they're sitting there and they're laughing and they're throwing the popcorn in their mouth and they're all just fucking around in the movie theater before the movie starts. Just, I don't know why, you almost like are rooting for them at that point, because they're just in the bar scene. There's just so much like hijinks and just like bullshit that you're like,
yeah.
I kind of like them.
Yeah, it almost like jumps the, like, you're supposed to hate these things into like, oh man, I kind of like, these things ain't so bad, right? Like, I mean, they just want to have fun. They just don't
just
understand.
Goofing off, drinking booze and shit. Like, it's good.
Dude, but her story, like,
that's
a whole nother thing. Like, she springs it at a really fucking weird time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it just comes out of nowhere, and you're like, wait a minute, what did she just say? And like I said, the first bunch of times I saw it never really dawned on me that I don't know if I would just have never paid attention that well or what, but this time I was waiting for it, and I'm like, wait.
And like, the story is, I found out there's no Santa because I lit my already dead dad on fire when I was 9 in the chimney. And like, as she's telling that story, Gizmo looks very interested. Yeah. But Billy is like checking the phone to see if it works. Like, he's doing a bunch of other shit and not really paying attention to her.
He was like me the first time I saw it. I didn't really hear what she said.
Yeah. And like, so I've known plenty of parents who've dressed up as Santa to give like gifts to the kids. I know a lot of dumb people. No offense to the dumb people I know. You know who you are. I love you, but some of you are dumb. I have never known one of those dumb people who were like, hey, I'm going to climb up on the fucking roof and come down the chimney with presents. Like, no. Nobody's ever done that.
And like,
Dad died because he was dumb.
He broke his neck. Did he go down fucking head first and like hit it on the like that like swoop thing that comes out so you don't like get backdraft with the smoke? Like, I'm not like a fucking chimney sweep or nothing. Yeah, damper, that's it.
Yeah.
How do you break your neck?
Yeah,
you had to have gone down head first, you fucking idiot. Like,
and like a chimney, most chimneys, unless you have like a really rich house or a really old house, the shit's like narrow and stuff. Like, how did he?
Lunacy. And then no one finds the guy. He's not yelling. You don't hear him screaming in there.
Yeah.
The torture until he perishes, stuck in that goddamn chimney. And then they only find him because he smells. They smell his rotting corpse. So not only did your father die in the house where you live in the chimney because he's a buffoon, but you had to smell his rotting corpse.
Yeah.
That's a horror movie. I'm sorry.
Right. And dude, so she's 9, right?
Yeah.
When did you stop believing in Santa?
I couldn't even tell you. I don't remember. Around then, maybe 8 or 9, 10.
Yeah, I feel like
7?
by that point you've been in school with some kids who are like, Santa's not real, right?
Oh yeah, there's always. I mean, everyone who knows, people who are listening to this that know me well enough, that know a friend of mine that I've known since kindergarten, he got suspended in the 2nd grade. So like.
There was no Santa?
No, but I'm sure he was aware of that and told other people. I'm sure. I'm not going to sit here and specifically blame JR for it, but I'm just saying I was probably aware of Santa not being real at a pretty young age.
And that bar scene too, I've worked behind a bar before. You have too.
Yeah. Hope to one day again.
Yeah. Dude, one of the main things that you usually look at is like, are these people going to pay me for the drinks that I'm giving them? And like, there's no way that these fucking little green fuckers are paying her.
Just handing out booze.
Some of them, she's giving them bottles. Some of them have like whole bottles from behind the counter. They're firing off fucking guns.
I mean, it's got to be, she's like, well, I serve them or they do something to me. So I think she was just being nice.
That scene is fucking crazy, and Spielberg says that's his favorite scene in the movie. And his favorite gremlin in the movie is in that scene. He likes the fucking fedora gremlin, who's like the fucking mob boss gremlin. He calls it the Sinatra gremlin. That's sitting at the table. What's your favorite gremlin?
I will say this. I do like that they followed the rules of Fedora, where if one person's, you can only be one Fedora to a crew. So like they kept it to that. I mean, Gremlin. I guess I like the two. I like the two Gremlins that are wearing like the sunglasses when they're sitting there eating the popcorn in the movie theater. But then does Gizmo, he's a Mogwai, so it doesn't really count, but I love that little bastard, man.
Yeah. Gizmo's
I got a bunch of his merch. I have a bunch of Gizmos. Like I said, I got that doll, I have some other crap. I got a bunch of Gizmo crap.
I'm a big fan of the Christmas Caroler Gremlins. Because they're not singing anything. Because some of the gremlins like learn words, right? Like they say words at different times in the movie, but those motherfuckers are just
They know they're supposed to be making noises. They're just not sure what. And like you said, the scene is cut, so you just see them going down the street, and you're like, "This fucking carolers right there! Like, what the hell?"
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, so like, it's clear we both love this movie, right?
It's a good movie.
But there's a bunch of shit wrong with this movie, and I just want to talk about a couple of those things.
Sure.
For starters, no one freaks out that Mogwai exist. Like, nobody even seems a little bit shocked. Like, I would be like, whoa, what the fuck is that? Holy shit, it talks. Like,
yeah, there's this new species of something, and no one is really, like, feels the need to alert anybody or anything. Like,
just the dog. The dog's the only one that's like, holy fuck. What's that?
And that's true. The dog was just freaked out by it in real life.
Yeah. But like no one, his mom, his dad, the fucking science teacher, hell, Corey Feldman watches it spawn more of them when it gets wet, and he's like, oh shit, 3D glasses, sweet. No one in the least little bit seems shocked that this creature that no one's ever heard of before is just here.
Yeah.
That's weird to me. Also, there's the rules, right? Yeah. So like, the dad didn't bother to ask what happens if you break any of them. That would have been like my first fucking question. After, whoa, what the fuck is that? Is, okay, so what happens, like, if I feed it after midnight, what's going to happen? If it gets wet, what's going to happen?
Follow-up question, when can you start to feed it again? Midnight is when you stop, but what if it's 5 a.m., 6? What are we looking at here? How long do I got to keep this thing?
Exactly. Is it sunup? Is there a specific hour? Like,
is he going to tell me? Like,
right. Because I don't want to fuck this thing up and have it fucking do whatever it's going to do that I forgot to ask you what it is. The only people who seem to know these things exist are the fucking grandfather and the kid, and no one asks them shit. Also, one of the things is don't get these things wet, right?
Yes.
There's snow everywhere. Snow is frozen water. Wouldn't that just get them wet all the time?
And another thing that happens right in the beginning of the movie is this: the grandpa, he's like, no, I'm not going to sell it to you. And then the kid sells it to him. He doesn't like check up like, oh, wonder what happened to that Mogwai I had there that I wasn't going to sell to that guy. Like you just lose track of that fucking priceless item that you refuse to sell, which has all kinds of rules.
Right. Also, $200. While $200 is a bunch of money, that's not like a crazy amount of money for a thing that doesn't exist anywhere else. Like,
right? Because like you know, not to like spoil it, but like at the end, Mr. Wing comes back, obviously like looking for the thing, but like that was a long time to like not have that Mogwai in your possession to be like, you know what I mean? Like, what is it, like 2 or 3 days where he's like. And their town isn't that big. You could just go find the kid that was asking about it, or the guy that was asking about it.
Well, I think that Chinatown was in a different place. Like, he was out traveling, selling.
Oh, yeah, because his dad's an inventor, right? Yeah.
But his dad left one of those cards. You know where the fuck he is.
Right, yeah.
You know how to get a hold of him. Like, what's your favorite dumb invention the dad makes?
I don't even remember a favorite. I just love all of them, and I just love his dad. Like, his dad to me is just this dopey asshole who, like, you just like, really, you're gonna give this kid like he reminds me of every old school dad like that they portray in those things. Like, go get him, sport. Like, he just gives him this Mogwai. Like, here you go, kid. Like, bunch of rules. Hope you follow them. Like. You know, like,
you'll shoot your fucking eye out.
Have at it, I guess. You know, like.
Yeah, dude, I'm a big fan. Like, some of his inventions in that are things that were like either real already or like people made real after, like the smokeless ashtray.
The smokeless ashtray is one. Yeah, that was a good one. I've had one of those.
But I'm a big fan of that fucking juicer that you put whole oranges in. Just the whole fucker.
Do you think that's where they got the idea for fucking Pee-wee's Big Adventure? They were like, let's use the juicer from fucking Gremlins.
Maybe. But that thing sprays, like, he puts one orange in that, and then it, like, showers the whole room with pale fucking orange juice.
How hard does it squeeze that goddamn orange?
Yeah. Like, that dude made amazing bad inventions. And then that one thing, I think it might be the juicer she uses to fucking shred that one gremlin up.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's got to have some fucking torque on it. It fucking sauces that gremlin.
So here's another thing. The fucking science teacher, right? So, like, look, I appreciate teachers. They have a rough fucking job. I also realized in the 80s, school was a lot different than it is now.
Sure.
But, like, I went to grade school in the 80s. And I'm positive that the high school science teachers would not have been qualified to do experiments on or figure out what the fuck a whole ass new life form was.
Yeah, I like that he's not like, oh, let's go, like, if anybody's probably gonna know like who to call, some scientists or something, he probably know. He's like, let's do this ourselves.
Yeah. Like, I want to know, and then, like, if you know how to do that shit, how the fuck did you end up as a science teacher? Like,
right?
He's doing experiments at a public school at like 2 a.m.
Dude.
There's something shady going on with that fucking guy.
He's just hanging around at school at all hours of the day.
Yeah. Like, again, I realized the 80s were different, but like now if they found out at a public school that one of the science teachers was there at 2 a.m. doing weird shit, that teacher would be fired immediately, whether there were kids there or not. I also have questions about Billy. Because he seems like a nice guy, but he finds the science teacher dead and doesn't tell a fucking person about it. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's bigger fish to fry at that point, though, Stacey. Let's be honest. The town is under attack, my friend.
It's true, and he goes to the cops to warn them about the gremlins, but not once does he mention, like, yeah, you know, these things, they killed the fucking science teacher, because the cops don't believe him. The cops are like, oh, go home. And he could have easily been like, go look at the fucking dead teacher.
Yeah.
But no, he's got nothing to do with that.
He chose another route there.
Yeah. Another thing that bugs me a little bit with this movie is, so they're at the movie theater, right? And that's fucking great scene in the movie. And he goes to Kate and he's like, do you know where the boiler room is? And then she does. And it's not just like over here in the corner or something. It's through a trap door behind the screen. Like it's in a very complicated place. I've worked a bunch of places that I couldn't tell you where the boiler room is.
Yeah, how did she know where it was at?
Yeah, and she knows where that is, but then when they get to the department store, she can't find a fucking light switch. Like, check by a door. That's where they usually fucking are.
A chain hanging down from the ceiling somewhere.
Right. Also, it's Christmas Eve, but the kids are in school and the bank is open.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not trying to pick this thing apart, but I've got like one or two more things. Mrs. Deagle publicly threatens to kill that dog multiple times, and not one person thinks it's fucked up.
The whole town just really hates that dog, dude. Just everyone's against it.
Like, she says the one line about, like, hey, that's a fucking crime. Like, you can't do that shit. She says the one thing about, like, yeah, I would torture it. I would put it in my dryer on Tumble Cycle or whatever. And the dude next to her is in the lawn's like, yeah, that'd do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like, oh, you're crazy, don't kill dogs. He's like, yep, that'll kill a dog.
And then you wonder, how is this town so ill prepared to handle these gremlins if they're all just ready to go throwing dogs in dryers? What the fuck?
Yeah, man, for a ruthless fucking town, they were ill prepared for these gremlins.
Right?
Also, how did the little Mogwai, like, when they're little baby Mogwai, they're not like gremlins yet. They're in that box mostly.
Yeah, just when he gets wet or whatever, when he spills the water on him.
Yeah. How did they tie the dog up in the Christmas lights?
Stripe, man, he got them all to, he's the leader, I guess. That's what I was led to believe. He convinced them all to do it, I guess. I don't know. That and the dog, the dog's a little bit of a wuss.
I guess. I mean, that dog did seem like he was a little bit of a wuss. This is nitpicky, but the one gremlin cuts a phone line and says phone home. There's no way in its short little life that gremlin has seen E.T.
Great film, by the way.
It is, especially now that it's restored and doesn't have weird walkie-talkies in place of guns for no reason. And lastly for me, and this, again, and with all this shit, it does not in any way diminish how much I love this fucking movie. I'm not like trying to shit on it. It's just like, if there's shit wrong with a movie,
we're making the podcast. We're going to mention it.
Right. The little car, man. So, like, it doesn't have an engine or, like, pedals or anything. Yeah. How is Gizmo just driving that shit around the department store?
There's no wind-up part. Like, there's nothing to making it go. Yeah. They needed a cutscene where, like, maybe he's Fred Flintstone underneath there or something.
Yes, like anything. Just give me something. One little explanation of how this shit's working. No,
maybe even just put in some, like, pep, so it sounds like his little feet are running, and then maybe you would have gotten it if you, like, some shadow under the car and, like, a little...
Yeah, anything.
It's just going as if he's commanding it to.
I mean... We don't know what a Mogwai can do. Maybe that's a fucking power it has.
The force is strong with this one, Stacey.
Yeah. And it all comes full circle. So there's the sequel, which we're not really going to talk about on here, but I like the sequel.
Yeah, I mean, if it's worth watching if you like Gremlins, you check out Gremlins too. You gotta check out what they're up to in the new one,
Yeah, I think the second one's a little more cartoony, and it's a little more like just based on the Gremlins. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Which I think it had to be. They kind of took out. They became, they became the Gremlins once the movie came out. Then it was like, oh yeah, like that's what the second one was. Like it was a parody, almost not a parody, but like like a joke more per se of like. It wasn't like.
Yeah, it's not a horror movie.
Yeah.
It's a straight up comedy. It kind of, and you're right. It kind of is a parody of like itself and some other sequels and shit.
I think people were like, let's just see what we like. They liked the bar scenes, like we said. They liked the movie theater scenes. They're like, let's just put the Gremlins in funny. Let's make them do goofy shit.
Dude,
we can make a movie out of it somehow.
They like the movie theater scene so much they made another one.
Right.
Now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like.
You've seen the version with Hulk Hogan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess that was like theater only, and I don't remember. There was like a Mandela effect thing going on with that for a while with some people I talked to where they were like, Hulk Hogan isn't in that fucking movie. And then I watched a version of it and he wasn't in that movie. And I was like, hold on, do I remember this wrong? And then I looked into it and it was like, there's versions that you can watch at home now that have that scene included, but it was originally theater only. Because there's that weird thing where like he comes out and stops them from like making the film stop in the middle of the movie.
Like you think Hulk said anything racist to the Gremlins?
Yes. I don't know that Terry can go a day without saying something racist. Sure. I'm sure something came out of him. Now there's everything I saw online says there's going to be a Gremlins 3. Like it's in the works now.
I mean, everything's a fucking remake of something, so it's not shocking, I guess, to me.
Right. Now, there is a new, like a prequel cartoon coming out that may answer a lot of the questions we have, or I have, about how some of this shit works with the Mogwai, because it's called Secrets of the Mogwai. It's going to be on HBO Max. Yeah. It's a prequel cartoon that comes out next year.
I like Mogwai, so I'll probably check that out.
Yeah, I'm always looking for an excuse to have HBO Max for the free trial period, and then get rid of it, and then get it again under a different thing for a free trial period.
Is it? Does that have Eastbound and Down on there? Because if it does, I'll rewatch that again.
Dude, HBO Max really has everything. It does have Eastbound and Down.
Great show.
It's like it is just packed with every show ever. Like everything's on HBO Max. Like South Park's on HBO Max.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, if they do this Gremlins 3 thing or whatever, I'll have to go check that out.
Right. Well, and that's another thing. Like it seems like everything's moving to like not really going to get released in theaters anymore, and everything's just gonna get immediately released on streaming services. So
I think they realized that there is a chunk of people who do love going out and doing going out things, being out and going to theaters and blah, blah. But I think they realize now with the internet and through streaming services and the way that they can release things, that there is a big group of people and of the population who would prefer to be at home and watch those things at home. And if you can charge, what they charge. Have you seen some of these like movies you can watch on streaming now that are like still in theaters, but you can watch them at your house? It's like $24 or some fucking crazy shit for like a 24-hour period of stream. So like they're getting your money. If you're doing it at home, like they're getting their shit. You know what I mean?
Well, right. Because figure like I know the theater here, like if you're not going to see something in 3D, if you're going at like normal time, I think it's like $10 or $11 for a ticket. So basically that home stream, they're making 2 people pay to see the movie, Yeah. They're getting 2 theater tickets worth of people. What sucks is it's eventually going to make theaters become a much more limited and exclusive thing, which there's something about going and seeing a movie in the theater that I like, but I also have a big ass TV and a surround sound system at home, and I don't totally mind watching some shit at home either. Like there's shit I'm probably more likely to watch at home than I would have been to ever go to the theater and see it, but like I want to go see the next Halloween movie in a theater, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, with those big reclining chairs and stuff now, you can drink beer. They have like literal entrees of like meal. You can have like a fucking entree, you know, like I want a fucking chicken parm sandwich and shit. Like you can get crazy shit at the theater now. So, I mean.
Oh, yeah, dude. That shit has been going on with like, have you ever been to Alamo Draft House?
I know of it. I've never been there. I've never been to Austin. So I've never. But that type of thing is taken over. You know what I mean? Like I heard you say it another podcast. Maybe it was your episode or something. But, you know, the Cedar Lee's been doing booze and stuff for a while like that. You know what I mean? It's a growing model for theaters nowadays, especially.
Yeah, you've been able to drink at the Cedar Lee for a long time. But the layout at Alamo is a little bit different because everything's like tiered. And you can like fill out these cards and then they bring you drinks that way. Like you don't even have to leave your seat.
Wow.
And shit. Yeah, it's rad, dude. And there's some like Alamo franchised a little bit a while ago. So there's one in Virginia.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought it was Austin, Texas, because Doug loves movies. Doug always talks about it.
It's originally Austin. Yeah. Like the OG one. Like I had a bunch of friends that used to live in Austin. When I was down, like I saw Blackula at the Alamo. Yeah, dude.
Do they have a basement there?
Of the Alamo? Oh, I don't know.
The Alamo.
But like, and they also, the Alamo has the whole Mondo thing too, which like I know one of my friends owns a company called Middle of Beyond that makes Christmas sweaters and stuff. I don't do ads on here, but a plug for that. Like, dude, go to Middle of Beyond, people, and buy stuff off of him. He makes rad stuff, and he's made some stuff with Alamo before in the past, and he has a Gremlins Christmas sweater that like Ozzy owns.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're. I know which company you're talking. You've said that before. They make a lot of cool sweaters. They have a Shining sweater that's like the pattern of like the carpet from the Overlook and shit. Yeah, that company's cool. They have a lot of cool shit.
He made rugs that are that pattern too, that you could put down in your house.
Yeah, that's fucking sick.
Yeah, dude. Tons of cool stuff. So
Man,
yeah,
here, hang on. You can edit this out if you want, but Dwight just texted me.
Oh shit! Now that's some crossover stuff.
Normally don't use my phone during the game, but just wanted to say I love football. Ed and Santa just gave Dwight Jr. a big old lump of coal. Oh, he said, wait, typo. Meant to say I love football and hate Ed.
Are the fucking Bengals winning?
The Bengals are beating up on the Steelers right now.
Holy shit.
17-0.
Do you know what that means?
We could win the division, yeah.
Yes.
I'm aware, yeah.
Oh, man, I kind of don't want to include this, but I kind of think I'm going to leave it in because, yeah, man, that has nothing to do with Gremlins, but go fucking Browns. That's great.
It's always fun to get live texts from Dwight with other people that know of Dwight because it's like it's almost like you're getting a text from Dwight now too.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been awesome having you on this show. Do you have anything you want to plug or anything?
Just PVD. You know, if you have never heard me prior to this on PVD or anything, if you're just, you know, new to old Ronnie Two Legs today, then I'm on a show called PodVanDam. And we do all kinds of fun wrestling Twitter news over there. We do people call in. We got some wacky characters that call in.
Like a character that we just talked about for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, Dwight's a friend of mine. He calls in. And then we have a Patreon too where we do a lot of different stuff. Similar, we do a show on there called Guilty Grease, where similar to this, we kind of review not movies, but we review Law and Order SVU. We do some question stuff. Ed answers a bunch of questions. I've done some episodes where wrestlers tell us their worst match they ever had, and we watch it and just shit all over it. Those were a couple good ones. Yeah, if you want more of me, there's plenty over in the PodVanDam universe.
Yeah, and the Discord is really good too. Like I'm in the Discord, and there's a lot of good folks in there. If you like wrestling but you hate talking about it on Twitter because it's a fucking brutal nightmare to you on Twitter, the PodVanDam Discord is a good place for that. It's also a good place for like to talk about like what cool food you just fucking made, or sports, or what fucking movies you like. Like there's a bunch of tabs in there, and there's a bunch of good people in there. So I encourage anybody who listens to PodVanDam and likes it to join the Patreon. It's well worth it, and it gets you into that Discord.
Wrestling is what kind of it's centered around, per se, I guess, loosely, but we have everybody in there. That's the thing. I mean, there's people in there that Ed have just been friends with his whole life. There's a girl, I forget her name. I don't know her real name, but Derpra, I think is her username. And she's like quilts and shit. She does like anime shit. So like, we talk about football in there. There's like every walk of life in there. It's not just, sweaty dudes talking about wrestling. Like,
right. She was the only one earlier who backed me up on my opinion on Canes.
There you go. Yeah. So, like, just to use that as a little small example, I mean, there's wrestling is the loose, bring together, but there's, like you said, fast food. There's a food tab. There's movies. There's sports. There's, politics. There's
a whole
everything,
weed tab.
Yeah, dude. It's all there, man. So.
Yeah, it's good. I strongly encourage people to check it out.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone has a fucking good Christmas, a good New Year's. This feed,
Hanukkah's just finishing up, right?
Hanukkah is, for all of our Jewish friends. It just finished up. Shout out to the Goldsteins.
Oh, yeah. Pants is Jewish.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of Jewish people.
Yeah. So the next episode of this show is going to be the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, that's good.
That is coming your way in January. The Clerks episode of the Kevin Smith series is coming in January. And in January, we will have a new episode of Superfantastic with me and Ed, who is also on PodVanDam with Pat. And the newest episode of that just came out, and it's a little bit different format. So if you listen to this show, but you've never listened to that show, go back and listen to the first Superfantastic. It is about shit that has nothing to do with horror movies, but it's kind of a horror movie in its own way.
Dude, I was trying to eat lunch the other day when he's just screaming, Julie! Like, how am I supposed to eat during that, guys?
I mean, my plan wasn't for people to be eating when that was happening.
It just worked out that way. And I'm not going to stop. Like, I was in the middle of the story. Like, I wanted to hear. I needed to know. Like, I only have so much, as we discussed earlier, I have so much time to listen to these podcasts. I was only in the car for so long, and I needed to know what happened to Christian West and Chandler. So...
Well, and if you guys want to know what happened to him, you can check out all those episodes on this very same feed. I hope everybody has a good rest of the year, and hopefully 2021 is not the fucking flaming shit pile that 2020 has been.
Yeah, no kidding.